Steve, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Good. So, Steve, I know I bring you on the show a lot, but the one thing we never really do is sort of talk about you. I know mainly that's because you hate that as much as I hate that.
Super uncomfortable.
Avoid that. But it is an interesting thing. You have a really cool past that we don't talk about as much. But the reason I'm bringing you on today's episode is more to talk about your past, in particular where you've worked, because you came from a place that I'm sure every listener has A, heard of, B, probably
Purchase stuff
from. C, hates what they did. Like their customer-centric approach probably pisses them off because of how much they have to work on getting things at these different things, because the customer, whether it be B2B or B2C, their attitude shifted.
They're the standard.
And that standard is Amazon.
Yes.
So you worked at Amazon prior to joining Aborn & Company.
Yep, right out of college.
So tell me a little bit about it. What was your career like? What did you do? What was what was happening there?
Sure. So right after college, I went out with two kids that I actually played football in college with. The three of us went from Boston. We went out to Seattle, got a townhouse together in Capitol Hill, and started to work for Amazon. So we were part of kind of this cool new program that Amazon was doing, where they were actually going for the first time ever into undergraduate campuses and recruiting. So traditionally, they had only hired really industry hires and MBAs. Right. So it was the first time ever that they had said, let's go down and let's actually get some undergraduates. So I was part of the second ever, retail. You can cut all this. I'll start it again. I was part of the second ever undergraduate recruiting class at Amazon. So it was a really cool program where like 35 different kids from schools across the country actually joined basically in two cohorts. So it was like 15 or so people joined in June, and then another 20, 25 people joined in July. And so it was cool because you were actually able to kind of ramp and experience starting your first job ever with people who were in the exact same position. So I joined. It's kind of funny when I talk about this. So I had two friends, like I mentioned, and we went to work in retail. And one of my friends, he worked in video games, which is super cool, right? Like any kind of most adult males, around our age and younger would be super jacked up to work in video games. Yep. My other buddy, he was going to work in sporting goods. So I'm like, all right, cool. What am I going to get? And I got kitchen. So.
Wait, how did you get that?
I don't know. It's kind of a black box. It's like the sorting hat put me in the kitchen.
Yeah, was that just they announced Slytherin to you and your buddy's like, oh, my bad.
I was like, well, what did I say during my interview process that they decided that I was the kitchen guy? But yeah, so on the retail side, the way that Amazon breaks it up is they kind of have three main verticals in how they support their vendors. So you kind of have the marketing and merchandising side. You have your vendor management, who are doing a lot of the contract negotiations, and then you have the supply chain management group. So those are kind of the three options that you have. And what I joined was kind of a cool program where for some of their larger vendors, like really, really large, 50, 100, 200, large companies that would be doing that much business on Amazon. So I think the company that I was working with was doing about $100 million a year in kitchen on Amazon. And so why the role was cool was because you're able to do the marketing, you're able to do kind of take the lead on some of the vendor negotiations, and you're able to do the supply chain aspect of it. So I did that for about 9 months to a year, and then I actually got promoted into a full-time supply chain role. So I was actually managing a couple of different categories. So the cutlery category and the bakeware category. So for a period of time there, every single pot, pan, or knife or baking molds. I learned about all sorts of new products during my time there. That were coming through Amazon, not in kind of that third party atmosphere. I was kind of buying and managing.
Okay. So just like clearing it up for the audience, because we are Aborn & Company. Yeah, sure. You getting into supply chain had nothing to do with Aborn.
No.
You weren't even thinking about Aborn at this point in time.
No. I went to work for Amazon all my internships and all the work that I did kind of in undergraduate was all finance based. I thought I was going to do kind of the typical, grow up in Boston, move down to New York, go work in an investment bank, work 150 hours a week, and then transition into private equity or something. But, those actually what happened is my friend who I mentioned, he had taken a job with Amazon. He was out in Seattle and he was like, just come out for the interview. So I go through the interview process and he's like, just fly out and do the interview. And the actual interview process was what sold me on the company. A lot of the finance stuff that you'd go through would be very combative. They'd always be trying to trick you and make you feel like a fool. But Amazon was super collaborative, which I liked. Right. Having grown up playing sports my whole life, I really liked that team atmosphere. Mm-hmm. So I liked how collaborative just even the interview process was. I liked the energy there. So it's like, let's take a shot. Let's go out to Seattle. So that's kind of how I got there. It was honestly an awesome interview process and getting to see a new cool city. So off I went.
What about maybe we cut this out or not? But what about dislikes? I mean, working there? A lot of times you hear from consultants and everyone talks about what Amazon is, but you don't usually get to hear from someone who truly had it there. I mean, it's not dislikes, but what were some of the things you're like, oh man, this is. Why are we doing it this way? Was there stuff like that?
I think some of the dislikes that I felt a little bit of, but a lot of people here, you get a lot of this, is there really wasn't any training there, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, right. You're cocking your head. But it really was roll up your sleeves, work collaboratively, ask a bunch of questions and figure out how to drive results on your own type of atmosphere. There wasn't really, I guess my role was slightly different because I was coming in as part of a program. So there was like, there was like 2 weeks of, maybe an hour or two a day where they were training you on certain tools that were kind of native to Amazon. Mm-hmm. But there's no real training process. And I think they've tried to change that over the last couple of years because it was something that you heard a lot of. But yeah, that was certainly something that kind of struck me as strange. And I think a lot of people had a hard time with it was kind of show up and perform.
That's fascinating, especially because I kind of want to transition now into talking about something that seems riveting to kind of discuss with you, which is that idea of what is Amazon like during December? Because now, I mean, I didn't go Black Friday shopping. I went online. Just was immediately on my couch doing that stuff. And I think more and more people are turning into December like, hey, I got to shop. I got to find gifts for my family. Yeah, I don't even know what I'm looking for. I'm going to use these as like just an idea generator. Yeah. What was Amazon like in December? Especially if there's no training. Like how did that work out? What was it like?
I think it honestly, it starts before December. Really, in November and December were crazy. You're starting to get really crazy kind of leading up to Black Friday. So you can even see it now. If you go on the site, like a week before Black Friday, they'll start leaking deals and promoting kind of Black Friday promotions. So it was busy. There was a lot of work. There was a whole per kind of category. So whether it was kitchen or video games or sporting goods, per category each night, there would be somebody who would stay up the entirety of the night and, really make sure that there were no crazy deals or no price matches that would potentially cause Amazon to lose. You kind of hear about this stuff every once in a while, where maybe a TV would get matched to an offering at a competitor or another e-commerce site, and Amazon would go through so much volume at a loss that they'd lose a couple $1,000,000 overnight. So you'd have somebody up kind of all night, making sure that as pricing is kind of coming through, that making sure that these were valid prices. And if we were going to potentially lose, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, at least leadership knew about it when they woke up in the morning.
So when this would start in November, or when was this start?
Yeah, typically mid-November kind of through. The good thing would be everyone basically got to go home at Amazon as soon as the what they call it, the super saver shipping. So as soon as the free shipping promise basically left, you were able to leave. So you're able to get out of there usually the 21st or the 22nd and get home. So, you're looking at probably a month there from the middle of November to, the early 20s in December, right before Christmas time.
So with no training, how do you, like, what was that first year like? Like, was not to keep harping on the no training, but
yeah, sure.
Did you just kind of catch the energy? Like, hey, people who've been here for a while had this kind of manic energy that's starting to build, and I'm just going to kind of feed off of that because I'm collaborative, or
yep.
Were they giving, was there any heads up?
So there's not really formal training, but I would say there very much was kind of again, going back to the teamwork. So there very much was a team atmosphere. So,
right.
Again, whether it was the kitchen team or the video games team, you did have a lot of support, and people would kind of talk you through, all right, here's what's going to happen over the next couple of days. Here's what you're going to be responsible for. Here's what to look for. So you're kind of leaning on, your manager, leaning on other folks who are in the exact same role as you, and kind of leaning on your team to figure out what should I be doing on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, that's kind of how you tried to navigate it as best as you could.
What type of hours and like days were we talking for that like month?
Yeah, you were pretty consistent at 12 hours in the office. Usually kind of like a 7 to 7. One good thing would be they would schedule. We had SMEs, subject matter experts, and so for Q4 there would literally be a fun SME on each team, and your job as the fun SME, which is usually the one of the younger people on the team, was to figure out events, places to go, just ways to get people out of the office or bring fun into the office so that it was a better experience.
Yeah.
So, you're trying to navigate long hours and kind of keep a positive attitude in a really stressful time. So
was that like I know I read all the time about like the offerings, like the gym on site, the food and stuff like that.
Nothing,
was that
nothing?
None of that? No.
Nothing. No, that's Microsoft stuff.
Oh.
There's none of that. No. One of the big things that Amazon will preach as part of their leadership values, and they, maybe they don't take it as seriously now with their biodomes or biospheres or whatever it is, but is frugality. So when you looked at free snacks or anything like that, there wasn't a whole lot of that, going on. I think, Jeff Bezos is kind of famous for every single person at Amazon literally works on a door desk. So you have legs and then you have a door, just like you take a wooden door
right.
off of the, off the hinges on your door and lay it down. So everyone works on a door. It's a very kind of frugal, workman-like, collaborative atmosphere.
Right.
Yeah.
So we got the time, right? 12-hour days, the extra time where you'd be in the buyer and stuff.
Going home, being on email, go to the gym, try to eat something quick, and then you're back on email, making sure that, something didn't blow up in your face.
Let's talk about the work itself though. So how did it work? I mean, it seems like you guys were kind of being proactive mainly because you kind of keep mentioning the hoping something doesn't blow up in your face.
Yep.
What was the work like as a supply chain manager in
Sure.
December at Amazon?
Yeah, I think it's a lot less. You're executing a lot, and you're doing a lot, but you're able to do a lot because you very much are in an auditing role. I mean, I think one of the things that and every the Wall Street Journal will tell you this. You hear this over and over again. But one of the things that Amazon did so well is really they set up systems and processes to automate a lot of the work, and then they capture data on everything. So I think when you're looking at how Amazon approaches problem solving, it's going to be find an automated solution, put that in place, and then measure it. So what we were and then have all sorts of reporting structures and kind of, whether it was a meeting or, a WBR, a weekly business review, or kind of something that would go in front of a VP or some, you were doing a lot of reporting. And really that was where a lot of your work was. How
do you find time to report during the busy? I mean, you're getting
So you're not actually doing, for the most part, you're not doing a ton of the reporting. These reporting structures are all done by financial analysts or business analysts or kind of the business intelligence team. So you're managing reports and you're managing kind of correspondence reports around reports, and you're managing metrics. So what you're trying to do is really look at your business. So just if you kind of take a step back, when I was in that supply chain role, I was managing at any given time about $300 million worth of inventory across, it was close to 1 million different SKUs.
Right.
So how can you manage 1 million different SKUs as one person who's managing two categories, right? Is you
Right.
have really, really solid, it would be one way to say it, reporting structures, right? So
Right.
I think a lot of the work that you were doing on a day-to-day basis was managing your really important metrics, and figuring out trends, figuring out where some of your weaknesses could potentially be. Are we looking, how's our stock allocation across our network? Are we looking a little bit low in any areas? Are we kind of out of stock on an item? Do we have really low weeks of cover on another item? I mean, those are kind of some of the problems that you're trying to get in front of, in order to get through and really, again, offer, you brought it up earlier, but really offer the best customer experience. So Amazon's big thing was always start with the customer and work backwards. So if we're going to be out of stock, that's a bad customer experience. So I need to be, as a supply chain manager, managing my inventory like a hawk, managing my vendor relationships like a hawk, and making sure that your metrics aren't getting blown up by bad out of stocks or bad inventory allocation or anything like that.
So how were you measuring that? Like, what were some of the key metrics for you as a supply chain?
Yeah. I think at Amazon, in retail, everything really starts with what they would call glance views, or page views. So for everyone that's shopped on Amazon, once you go to a product detail page where it has, this is the picture, this is the price, here's the seller, all that information. So as you go to that page, that's being recorded. So if you think about, if anyone's ever gone to an Amazon page and they haven't had that item, right?
Right.
So probably after some of these Black Friday deals last week, they sold through some of that inventory, and so they couldn't offer you that inventory in a prime pickable location, which just means they're able to fulfill their 2-day promise, right?
Right.
So that would be one of the key metrics that you'd be able to that you'd have to measure on a day-to-day basis is in terms of total glance views or a rate of glance views. What products did we not have yesterday, or did we not have last week? And you really had to have a firm understanding of, if we don't have that, why don't we have that? And what are you doing about it? So can you source it from somebody else? Why doesn't the vendor have it? Why won't they give you more? Why didn't we buy more? Why? You really had to be on top of the ball because, every morning you're having kind of a daily stand-up meeting where at 9:00 you're going through that deck. And if something's out of stock, if something's not in the right location, if it's going to cost us more money than it should to ship something to a customer, you're responsible for that in front of 30 of your other team members.
But I'm trying to think of how to say this, but how during the extreme busiest time of the year,
Sure.
do you stay proactive like that? How do you think like that? Is it just a different mindset? Like how are you able to do that?
Yeah, again, I think it really comes down to data. The only way the great thing about data is if you're using it and you're capturing it and you're measuring things the right way, it provides a lot of that priority for you, right? So if I had, just for the sake of conversation, if I had 10 customers that saw out of stock detail pages on SKUs across my catalog, and 8 of them looked at one product, that gives me kind of an indication that, hey, this is the most important product from a customer perspective. That's the one that I need to focus on. Don't worry about the 2. Let's focus on the 8, and that serves 80% of the problem, right?
Right, but that sounds a little reactive, and I mean, Amazon's the way to do customer, like why they're so customer centric, is how they're proactive. So how did that work into it?
Yeah, from a in-stock manager perspective, I think what you're doing is it kind of starts with the forecasting, right? So you try to go upstream as far as possible. So you start by looking at your forecast, right? So do, because all these systems are automated. So your forecast is going to be an input to your buying system. Your buying system is going to look at that. It's going to look at profitability measures. It's going to look at some other stuff. It's going to make that purchase. That's going to go to the vendor. The vendor then confirms that, right? So each chain, so maybe we bought plenty, but the vendor is canceling off orders. Why, right? So those you're kind of starting upstream in the chain. Maybe you're saying, hey, we sold 1,000 of these last week, but my forecast says that I'm going to sell 200. Why? Right. So my forecast says that I'm going to sell 1,000. We don't have any in the buying system, just placed an order for 500. That's not enough. Why? Right. So you try to track the problem as upstream as possible and figure out where the break is. So it's a lot of that. Monitoring weeks of cover was a big kind of metric that we would measure. And basically what that's looking at is at our current run rate and at our inventory level, how many do I have a day? Do I have a week? Do I have 4 weeks? Do I have 8 weeks? Do I have 10 weeks? And I think that's really a challenge at a place like Amazon, where you do carry, potentially a million SKUs across a couple of different categories, right? That's very, very different than, a Walmart model or a Costco model, where they're buying huge amounts of inventory on maybe 15 products, 20 products in that category. Right. So it's a challenge, but that's the reason that they are who they are and why they're so successful, is because customers know that they can go and get great selection and get great pricing and have a great customer experience every time that they go to Amazon.com.
So how many people are running this operation?
Sure. If you think about, at one point we were a little bit understaffed in kitchen. So we were doing about a $3.5 billion a year business, $3.5 to $4 billion. And we had about 27 people managing that. So across, kind of supply chain management, vendor management, and marketing, and then all the people that manage those folks was at one point about 27 people.
In November, like in the November, December time.
Leading right up to it, right in the thick of it. And obviously that doesn't account for the people that support the forecasting systems and the buying systems and the website and all of that. But as far as a management team, you had, about 27 people managing $3.5 billion business. It's kind of crazy scale.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And it's all done because of systems and the reporting that you guys have and all that type of stuff built out?
Exactly. Yep.
Wow. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's one of those
kind of blows your mind when you really think about it.
Yeah. You think like Amazon, like the way they can do it is because they've got so much unlimited capital. They could just throw as many people as they want. And that's why they can have these insane 2-day turnarounds and stuff. But you're saying it's only 27 people handling $4 billion of freight, stuff just to get there is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, again, one of the things that really makes them so successful is their ability to operate at scale.
Yeah. One thing that's interesting, because we talk about it a lot on this show, especially between you and me, it's sort of, we hear buzzwords all the time, and we always kind of come to the same conclusion that hey, this buzzword's great. Digital supply chain twin, supply chain twin, AI, blockchain, all this stuff's all great. But realistically, most companies, you just don't have you can't invest the technology and stuff.
Yep.
Amazon's not one of those companies. So how much of that did you see, especially kind of as the new technology, these new buzzwords, these new kind of operating principles keep coming into place? Were you experiencing a lot of that at Amazon, or were those things like you don't really test that during Q4 or in December? Because
I think from my perspective, kind of in a business position and really kind of an analyst and execution position, that was really your job. But, you weren't really seeing, you were probably seeing the downstream impacts of those kind of emerging technologies, but it wasn't like we were charged with going out and finding an AI solution to this. It was, it was the forecasting team is using a new machine learning model to create better forecasts, and they would sit down and tell us why their model was great. And then from a business perspective, you'd sit down with them and say, well, here are the gaps, here are the gaps, here are the gaps. You considered this? Have you considered this? What about this? What about this? So it was really kind of trying to bring those puzzle pieces together on some of the, kind of some of the emerging technologies and how different different kind of tech teams were thinking about integrating that into the Amazon, and then it was your job as kind of a business owner to be an advocate for, hey, at the end of the day, if this blows up and your bad forecast causes me to go out of stock, that's on me, right? So
Right.
it was kind of incumbent upon you to make sure that people were really vetting a lot of the technologies that they were trying to use in order to automate all these systems, right?
Right. So you got to have like, you got to get some stake in the game. You can't just sit there and go like, oh, it's not like, it's cool. This technology doesn't work. I'll find a workaround with all this stuff. You guys had to, you're like, no, like,
Yeah, and I mean, you bring up a good point in terms of workarounds. I think that's one thing that Amazon does a really good job of is you're not seeing a lot of workarounds, and I think that speaks to two things. It speaks to they're developing a lot of that technology in house, and so they're doing a good job, and also just from the top down, they're focused on making sure that their users are using the systems that they're creating, right? I think that's one thing that we see all the time in the work that we do here as we work with companies is if technology isn't perfect and it's not as good as the way that we used to do it, sometimes we see folks try to go around the technology, right? So you didn't see a ton of that at Amazon, and I think it speaks to the quality of the tech, right? It speaks to the solutions that they were building, but it also speaks to from a top down that wasn't really an option that you were given,
Right. It still solved everything. There's still that collaborative, like roll up your sleeves, let's figure out this type of thing.
Yeah.
But understanding the technology, understanding the system, I mean, in theory, it's a marketplace, a technology built marketplace. So you got to use the technology for this marketplace to work.
Yeah. And then there's a fulfillment arm of that, right? So it's a market, and then they fulfill those orders that you're buying, all the goods that you're buying in that market. Then they're fulfilling it, and it just shows up at your doorstep.
Right. So we're kind of getting a little late. I'm just going to start to wrap up. What was that first December after Amazon like for you? What was the differences when you kind of went into another organization or another company's busy season?
Yeah, sure. I think after the first kind of peak at Amazon, the first thing I did was go home and sleep for like 2 weeks. Just tuck my tail between my legs.
Like,
headed back to Plymouth, Mass, and took a nap. But yeah, in terms of kind of what other companies are doing that they could learn as they approach peaks is
kind of
totally.
In that.
So I think I think it goes back to kind of what we were just talking about. Really, it's about how do you create systems that people aren't going around, and then how do you capture data and report on those peaks so that you can really understand where where you're missing, where your gaps are, and then start to putting a plan in place. So now I have a plan. I'm able to measure my plan. Work happens. Now we're able to go back and say, this is the work that we did. Here's where we did well. Here's where we didn't do well. And then, kind of sizing those opportunities in terms of the gaps and saying, okay, so we did really good this time. We did really well this time. Here's kind of our gap. And then here's our process for the next time we go through peak. Here's how we're going to address that. And so as you continue to kind of measure measure what you're doing and then get better at it, I think that's really one of the key learnings is their ability to use data to measure their performance, and then you use data to really plan for the future.
Right.
And it's a cycle. It's a cycle.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, before we wrap up, I think if the listeners kind of who are listening kind of more in line with when we put this out, we actually have pretty cool thing that's going to be occurring on December 12th, a little webinar that's free for everyone. But really, it's more of a live Q&A with you and also Jill, because you guys are extreme experts when it comes to visibility. So talk to me a little bit about this webinar that's coming up on December 12th, not July.
Yeah, sure.
Freezing out right now. That's what I'm thinking. Like, let's go back to July where it's nice and warm.
Yeah. There's not a foot of snow on the ground. So I think what we're trying to accomplish is there's a lot of conversation in the industry around visibility, and it's really across modes. And there's a bunch of emerging technologies in the transportation industry, and everyone's trying to sell you on the visibility that you're going to be able to get, and how much that's going to save you in terms of performance and cost and all these things. So I think what we're going to try to talk through is what are some of these technologies, what are they doing well, what are some of the gaps, and then if you take a look at your own organization, I think what we're going to try to do is really say, here are some of the personas, here are some of the archetypes of where we see companies, and then if you're at this persona, how do I get to the next level? So try to bridge that gap a little bit for companies that are saying, hey, I'd love to be able to see where my shipments are, but I don't really even know where to get started. So,
and then, what I'm really excited about for this is it's you and Jill talking, and it's going to be all kind of reality. It's going to be an open conversation about this, not a, hey, this is exactly what our technology provides. It's not that
the
approach.
Goal is not for us to sell ourselves, our products, or anything like that. So, we'd love to have a bunch of people attend and send. I think there's a mechanism for questions. So any kind of questions that people have, we'd love to make this as collaborative as possible.
Yeah, I mean, we're keeping it a smaller group. So the whole idea is for you and Jill to have more time to talk to individuals and answer individual questions. So to register for that, it's going to be on December 12th at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Just go to abornandco.com/webinar. It's a free registration. It's on demand too. So share it with your colleagues, share it with your CMO, share it with kind of everyone. If you're a shipper who's, hey, I need to know visibility, but I also think that some other people in this organization kind of need to hear the reality of visibility, I think this is an excellent opportunity to kind of listen to it, ask questions.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's really the goal here is, to share a little bit of information, share our experience. I mean, it's work that we're doing on behalf of customers every day, and then answer a bunch of questions.
Yeah, I mean, just the sheer amount of prior experiences you guys bring to the table / how much you guys are dealing with this on a day-to-day basis. It's going to be a can't miss. Like right as you're kind of about to wrap up the whole year and get ready for 2020, this is something to go to.
Yeah, we'd love if it is a busy time of the year, so we'd love if folks could take 30 minutes, an hour and join us and hopefully learn a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, we're going to try to keep it short too. We're trying to hit that 30-minute webinar that everyone likes. So you've got the opportunity to ask questions. We're going to have this real conversation, but we're aware. We just talked about Q4 and Amazon. We're aware how busy it is right now. So that's about it. That's all I got, Steve. Cool. So thanks for joining me, man.
It's just another day.
It's just another day. So
all right.
Let's wrap it up and we'll go into 2020 next year. It'll be fun.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye. How does your December in the supply chain compare to Steve's? Let me know in the comments section. In the meantime, enjoy past episodes of Consulting Logistics and subscribe to us by clicking the subscription button right now. Thanks for watching Consulting Logistics. I'm Kyle McNaught. Peace.